Welcome to the Tourism Hub podcast, a podcast devoted to you and your excellence, providing inspiration and education for the entrepreneurs, experience makers, and excellence seekers of our industry to take your tourism business and career to a whole new level. And I am your host, Despina Karatzias. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Global Ballooning, our inaugural little TV show episode. I'm here with Kiff Saunders, lest we forget, on Anzac Day.
Lest we forget.
And happy birthday to our own Kate as well. It's Kate's birthday today.
Oh, there you go.
There you go. Well, we've been catching up. Saturdays has been a little bit of a work day over the last few weeks. And we wanted to just take this opportunity to check in with you all and share how we've been going and reflect. You know, it's a day of reflection. It's a day of remembering our past. And certainly you've had a lot of connection with Anzac Day in your generations, in your background.
Yeah, I got up this morning at pre-dawn, and it was quite interesting to just be in an empty environment. I usually would attend the local Anzac Day ceremony, but both my grandfathers were participants in the war in fairly senior levels, and my father's father was in the Western Front in France in World War One, and my other grandfather was a battalion commander in World War Two.
Wow.
Both decorated, and we saw some serious action. And I didn't know my father's father. He died before I was born, but I certainly, as one of my mentors in my life, my mother's father, he was a very interesting person, never talked about the war. And, I ended up many years ago reading. I found that on the Australian War Memorial, you can look up the war diaries of these of commanders, and he was in the North Africa fighting Rommel, and was a battalion commander of the second machine gun battalion there, and that was a very decisive battle that virtually changed the course of the whole North Africa campaign as Rommel was defeated, and you read his diaries about living in the desert in Egypt, and it is really something else, actually. It is a great reminder of the times that we're actually going through now, which is actually, the hardship and how they had to cope with these situations. And as a battalion commander, he was, documenting, just every aspect, which included soldiers dying and having to kind of report everything, and just the disciplinary action and the actions and the moving around and the digging in of machine gun trenches. And, these people did this for years. It was just, such an incredibly emotional thing to actually understand that here is a man who was in his 30s, sitting overseas, fighting for democracy and freedom, and it's just, every year I take it very seriously to reflect on just actually what that meant, because I know that we kind of tend to celebrate Anzac Day and the soldiers, but actually having an understanding of these people, and like my grandfather, as I say, he never talked about this. I think that really they probably were quite traumatised by the whole exercise.
Yeah.
And he ended up coming back to Australia and then going to New Guinea and fighting in New Guinea for another couple of years as well. So 5 years of service to do that. My other grandfather fought in World War One, and the war ended, and I thought, the war ended and they all went home, but they didn't. he was left in France for 3 years repatriating bodies, you can imagine that type of job. So I take Anzac Day very seriously, and I really, I think it does shows the measure of humans and their resilience. And certainly if I was reflecting on this situation, it does give you strength to actually realise we can endure, and life goes on, But yeah, certainly, these people had a lot tougher than we have.
That's true.
Yeah.
You're saying you didn't, your mother's father that didn't talk about it much, your
Yes.
grandfather, but he kept journals. Did you end up reading?
Well, I
Is
mean,
that
yeah, but
something?
through the Australian War Memorial, I mean, all of that is documented. And it's incredible. It's
That's
like you just
amazing.
go down this rabbit hole. I mean, I spent months and months, just reading, virtually daily reports of everything, every movement, everything. I mean, you can understand when the Australians are over there, you don't just kind of go over and start fighting. I mean, a lot of it is boredom. They weren't fighting all the time. You don't get a sense of that, I mean, it's digging in, and so, these commanders have to kind of not just manage fighting, it's actually managing like a town of people. I mean, it's leave, it's discipline, it's kind of getting everything happening, it's a mail delivery, it's food service, it's, it's taking, I mean, he had, like something like 800 men under his command, and then during the main campaign, when he was part of the composite forces fighting Rommel, I mean, 3,000 men. It's just incredible. And so, each person in a commanding position has these, they have to keep these very specific notes. And as I say, it's really interesting. I mean, when you kind of get a sense of it all, and you go to just look at, a lot of it is just so mundane. And here we are, like we look at the fact of being locked in our homes. I mean, these people are living in tents in the desert to do this for months and months and months on end, and then people dying around you. I mean, in conflict. So it was, it was a real eye opener for me, because again, I knew he had fought in the war, but I had never given any kind of credence to what that was involved in that process, because we tend to just kind of dramatise war, but quite often it is a lot of just like sitting around and preparing.
And that experience that, like you said, we're having, it's nowhere near to that of what we're experiencing now. But the level,
And I mean that, on the other side of that, I mean, and talking to my grandmother, who I was very close to, and that's my mother's father's husband, the stuff that they were doing back here in Australia to support the war effort. I mean, this is a time with rationing. I mean, all of this type of stuff, and raising money, and women doing the work that the men were normally doing, and just even having a concept of just what was involved in that. I mean, talk about stepping up. I mean, when we talk about this kind of idea of equality and gender equality, I mean, back then in these times, I mean, kind of many of the women were kind of running the whole show in how it was done. And again, I mean, when you look at Anzac Day, it's a really big picture of just how that was being handled. And you get a sense of that now with the emergency services having to deal with this crisis. I mean, these people really, truly, they are amazing, and I have complete admiration. And so when I say lest we forget, I mean, certainly I'm not one to glorify war or to think anything about it being an amazing thing. It was a time of resilience for a huge amount for the whole population of Australia, not just the men fighting, and I think that's, they all stepped up and they played their role, and and they put, the country and community before everything. And I think that, that's what Anzac Day means to me. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
It is, that's the putting the country and community before oneself.
Yeah.
Which is what we're all doing right now, isn't
Well,
it?
I think
Putting
that
the country and our
that's
communities.
it. I mean, this is a very,
devastation.
it's a very hard time, and particularly for a business like ours and for our little team. I mean, we tend to get absorbed in our own sense of loss. But, we're all in this together. And I mean, the reality is the ripple effect of this will last a long time. I tend to just kind of look at the concept that, I mean, we live such an amazing lifestyle here. And I mean, even compared to those days of just the normal life of my grandparents and what they were and how they lived to how we live now. we can go back a long way before we have to start hitting any panic buttons. I mean, I think it's just adjusting to loss. It's adjusting to a different way of life. And, and it's, probably looking around and seeing what you can do for people. I think in these situations, it really does strengthen community. And I think that's a really good thing. I mean, in all of this, you've got to actually remember that, okay, it's not all about money. It is about just, adjusting your lifestyle. And I've always been a great advocate of simple pleasures. And again, I grew up on a farm, where this type of lifestyle was just de rigueur, we lived this. It's not the end of the world. You've just got to kind of make sure that you just readjust what it is that can to give you fulfillment, and I think that really can create a lot of creativity within you to be able to work out how not to be bored. And boredom's a big factor in it all. I mean, probably more so than anything in a situation like this. And again, that's just being clever in your own mind. And I think that adversity always creates change. I don't think change necessarily occurs really easily when things are going well. Adversity always brings out the best in people, and it certainly is a catalyst for being able to adjust one's way of how you think about things. And certainly for me, as I say, if I wanted to dwell on the devastating loss of my business or whatever, I could go, I could fall right over. But being able to actually readjust my thinking to, well, what can I do now? It actually is quite energising. I find my energy levels are a lot higher now than just the general day-to-day run of doing the mundane process of making money and business and doing what we do. It's even within my little family nucleus at home, where we're all kind of stuck there doing our thing. Sitting down for dinners, chatting, sitting around the fire, taking turns in cooking. These are things that never used to happen when we're really busy. And I kind of like that. I really like it. I really like the concept that we're seeing a shift in our dynamic. For good or for bad. It's not always good, and I'm sure there's many people who are suffering, and I don't want to trivialise that. But certainly I think that, for me, I've always been one who works best when I am challenged. When I get too comfortable, I find my mind can be working. It becomes idle in how it's working. It becomes more kind of self-indulgent. While when it's actually being committed to, actually having to do something.
Yes.
As we are here today, what can we be doing? And slowing yourself down, not realising that there's a mad race to a line here. All of this, just having that clear air in your head, and a clear mind, and not focusing on the drama, but more on the solution, I think is a great way. And again, I kind of feel more at peace with myself right now than I ever have. Or not ever have, but certainly, in the last few years.
Yeah. Well, it's certainly been nice to come in on a Saturday.
Yeah. Well, I don't even know what day it is, Despina.
True.
I'm kind of trying to work out, what time it is. I get up with the sunrise, but this is also a lovely thing. Is that it's things are not time relative. I'm working harder than I probably ever have, but it's it's not connected to a necessary task. It's just what I choose to do, and it's quite interesting to see that even driving now. I usually drive around, and I'm swearing at drivers and doing. And now, even just coming into the office today, no reason to break the speed limit, no reason to be cutting in around traffic. It's just so cruisy to see yourself just realise that I'm not in a hurry to do anything. If I feel like stopping, stop. If I want to go. Yeah. Very interesting.
It is very interesting, and your life is very interesting. And we have put together a collection of incredible imagery from when global ballooning started, and I guess that was the concept of using our time effectively with our business, like many other tourism and hospitality businesses, were the first to really be non-essential. And just as an accomplished balloonist, that's going back to 1991 and pre-1991, do you see that the lifestyle now is reminiscent of those early days of the simple, the simple things of keeping Kiff Saunders, I guess even just Kiff Saunders back then, and the enthusiasm to start a business or enter into a business, and reflecting on that, and now having to go back to a startup mindset with the benefit of hindsight and experience that you've had in 28 years. How is that sitting with you right now?
Well, it's interesting. We're having a bit of a kind of dispute at the house the other day about me being a bit of a curmudgeon and kind of cracking the whip around the house, and the kids weren't too thrilled about that, because I've got this, I've got to keep busy just to keep myself kind of, like not thinking negatively, and they should buy into this too, because we are a family and all of this. And anyway, it was a typical family dispute. I'm sure everyone's like having them
in a lot of households.
And I was trying to, I was listening to their point of view and saying that, look, I get it, like the 20-year-old me, they're looking at my 20-year-old self, and that when you don't have anything, you really don't have anything to worry about, I find. That's kind of an interesting philosophy in life, is just that, the less you have, the less you have to worry about. So they work on a time frame. Nothing really bothers them. They can be, this whole world can be falling apart, and they're not really that fazed by it all. As long as they're out there, they get their food and whatever, and they can piss around like they do, and, work in their own things or be tardy. They're really cool with that. And I was looking at myself, it's like, look, to be honest, that's a pretty reasonable argument, in the fact that, like, it really, that if I was in my 20s, I would see things differently. And I'm trying to say, look, I'm 58, I'm not 57 now or something, but whatever I am, over time is not relevant, 57 or 58. But it's different because I have a lot. I've got a lot of things I've got to maintain. I've got a business I'm trying to kind of keep going. I've got staff. I've got all these things, and there's pressure on me, and they don't. They can just stop, and if they've got no money in their bank account, they'll live accordingly. And if that means sleeping in a swag under a tree, they'll be very happy with that. what I mean? So it's kind of like, it is this time has been a reflection of the 20-year-old me, but more so before even ballooning came along. As I mentioned earlier, adversity makes me more resilient. I'm very stubborn about, like, achieving objectives, and I've always had a very, very much a kind of karmic kind of thing. If you believe something, you can make it happen, type of thing. And this, but not that I can learn to play the piano, or I'm going to become the greatest. It's more that that everything will be okay. So, like, even in my early travelling days, and China, in a sense, because I left Australia on my first overseas trip straight into China in 1985. I had no idea. My parents said, "I'll never let you in," and that type of thing. And I went there, but I did actually learn a lot about myself, in the sense of that if you trust in humans, and you believe that everything will be okay, it generally is. And that if you can just throw your fate to the fact that, like, circumstance will determine your journey, and if you can allow for opportunity to present along the way through the challenges that are presented to you, and you can react accordingly, magnificence will happen. And that's quite an interesting kind of thing, because I always say to people, I've never applied for a job in my life. I don't generally have plans. I don't make commitments. I just follow. It's like water running down a kind of rocky outcrop. It's just following its path. And along that way, you know, my grandfather, the one who fought in the Second World War, you know, he had this expression that I must have heard thousands of times. It's a bad day when you don't learn something. And in that sense, it's like ask questions, be inquisitive, look around you, be peripheral, and see where the opportunity lies. Don't try and manifest anything more than what it is that you have done to get up and be engaged. And so in all of this process, my whole kind of life's journey, and which eventually involved getting into ballooning. It's not the type of thing you go to your careers advisor and someone says, you should be a balloonist. It just is a serendipitous occasion that you just happen to be somewhere where that opportunity presents, and then you grab it and you run with it and you see where it goes. And certainly for me, this whole journey to what global ballooning is today has, you know, predominantly been along those lines. I mean, I'm far more strategic than I ever was when I was younger. You know, I mean, all I wanted to do was initially was to fly a balloon. I mean, the concept of buying a ballooning company also occurred out of catastrophe. The industry collapsed, and I wanted to keep ballooning, and I could buy a cheap ballooning company. And again, these are the kind of, as I say, within all the things that have changed my direction are usually due to some form of catastrophic kind of situation that has occurred. And so, in answer to your question, like, you know, and I look at what is happening now, I know how far back I can go where I would still satisfy what I want, and all that the closing of one door does is open up the opportunity. So, you know, I know that I can go a long way back where it doesn't necessarily affect me so much. It's still a life, no matter what I'm doing. Like, I am a consummate balloonist. I mean, I started flying aircraft when I was 15, and my grandfather, lest we forget, he set up one of Australia's first flying schools in the 1930s. And so that's where I had my love of aviation. And so I was kind of destined to fly. So, I mean, for me, yeah, I mean, I'm not sure where it is, but I certainly am not concerned about, you know, where it's heading. For me, global ballooning can be back to being small. It can be back to when you started working in this business, you know, where we're two people in an office doing everything. And, you know, we still got the same amount of love and enjoyment out of that than we did having kind of 30 balloons and 40 staff, you know. I mean, so for us, I mean, the journey for me is that this is just another one of these kind of fatalistic curveballs that you just, you know, you just move with, you know. And I think that you don't panic. You just have that very strong belief that everything will be okay. And, you know, and I mean, you've been a part of my journey for a long time. I mean, you've seen a lot of my personal catastrophes in my life and things that are hard. And again, you just have to ride that wave and just accept the fact that life isn't always up. It is very kind of like, you know, fluid in its ups and downs, and similar to a balloon, you know, you just blow with it in whichever way it goes. And so, yeah, I mean, I think it would be unreasonable to say that I'm not anxious and concerned, but that's more at the concept of loss than actually having the loss. You know, like, I mean, whatever is lost from this is the reality. It's kind of sad when you've worked very hard to achieve something, but you know, again, I just feel that there is just, you know, that it will create a shift in our direction, and I couldn't be more intrigued about what this will mean for society. You know, I mean, the sense of this is a Kiff Saunders life lesson: simple pleasures, go with the flow, readjust, you know, get back up, keep moving, kind of thing. But this is across a global. I mean, how this kind of shifts our own consciousness. I'm really happy to. I mean, not happy. I'm really. I'm just really intrigued to see what that will look like, you know, for everyone. Do we decide that, like, we can live with less? And actually, enjoy a slower pace of life. And again, if that comes at an economic cost, I think it will come at an absolute personal gain.
Yes.
You know.
Because certainly you do come with a level of experience in in trauma that I was.
Yeah.
It was not thankfully, touch wood, it wasn't a ballooning accident, but you were involved in a significant life-threatening accident.
Yeah.
2010,
2010, yeah.
2010.
Yeah.
Oh, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
10 years ago. And even, the way that you handle that and your recovery, because that was a long 1 year recovery.
Yeah.
And even speaking to you the other day, even the aftermath of that physically as a balloonist, as an adventurer, and something that you live with, the physical pain of that. I guess for others that will be watching, and the other businesses that may not have a level of exposure to just getting out there and getting on, and the mindset that you bring to that, and sharing that experience of maintaining, we speak about a mental health and who you surround yourself with in these times to keep having that sense of community. But there'll be a lot of suffering mentally for people that may not have had that experience in business, when you're handling significant financial loss, when you take on the burden. I know you personally, even it's never been about Kiff, like you very much take on the 40 plus people that this business also employs. There's job seekers, keepers, but you're very much a job creator in all of this. Just something you impart of wisdom or knowledge to those that may be joining us on any of the live streams or listening, in terms of...
Yeah, I mean, it's quite interesting. Certainly, for those who don't know me, I had a major motorcycle accident 10 years ago, where a car driving on the wrong side of the road went straight into me. I was in a induced coma for 4 days. My body was shattered, and it took, as you say, a year to come back to work. Probably the single biggest challenge that I've faced. Recovery is something you just do, so that's kind of all, just a normal thing. You're repairing yourself. You actually get quite motivated, and that's quite easy. The mental component is definitely the biggest component to any recovery, I find. And I think that a lot of that has got to do with the loss of identity. For me, that loss of relevance, when you're injured or not, functioning, or people don't really want to kind of know you because you're not of any use to them anymore, you really do suffer a really big setback in your mental health about, you don't realise how much you actually rely, particularly on your work, for your own identity. We really do connect there, and I think that this is Gandhi, this idea of asking the Indian population to go back to the spinning wheel rather than these mechanised machines, because people need to be able to kind of feel they have an identity to what they're doing. This is why we're so blessed with being balloonists. It is real, it is connected to the earth, it is all of these things. And I was reading an interesting article in the Guardian from a young lady who had just come out of a psychiatric institution after 10 years as well. And she was saying that, people don't get counselling in these situations like you would if you were in a psychiatric institution in isolation. But this is about not dwelling in the story. For me, in my motorcycle accident, the worst thing not the worst thing, because it's the hardest thing is that everyone wants to talk to you about the accident, about how it must be so hard for you, about how, whatever it is, and you just live in this regurgitated story, and you can really, you can lean on that, you can make that an excuse, but it keeps you in that kind of picture of the accident. When what I wanted was to actually be around people who would talk to me about anything other than my accident, that I would actually be around motivated people, that people would give me information that would inspire me. And that's been my life in a way, be around inspirational. When you're being inspired, it is the greatest single thing that you can have as a gift from another person. And I think that in this situation, if you want to go and dwell in the media and the story and the Facebook and the Instagram and the every radio, it's like of what that story is, then, I think that, you kind of, you're going to live in that story. That's going to become your reality. While with me, it's always a diversion of attention. How do I divert my thinking away from the drama and onto where I want to be? And this is the first lesson in flying. Don't look at, if you're about to go fly into a tree and you'll keep look where you want to go, not like where you don't want to be. It's a really important aspect of kind of like, that idea of how you kind of control yourself under pressure is you've got to be looking where you want to go, not where you're going, And I think that that's very important in all of this is that, I'm blessed with the luxury now. I put my phone by my bed. I see it in the evening. I see it in the morning on my computer. And I go out and I work and I do stuff that has got nothing to do with ballooning. I miss it greatly. I mean, I really love flying, but I know there'll be a time that's back. And I realise, I had great plans to be going over and flying hydrogen balloons right now in Europe. I had all of these dreams ahead of me. My daughter was going on a gap year. We were going to go over Europe. And again, it's a real bummer. It's upsetting. I'd spent so much time working to this point. I'd installed you as CEO and it's over, and it's like now my hands are like, I don't know if you can see that, they're just blistered and like so hard and, wrecked from, wielding shovels, pouring concrete. And I'm loving it. I'm just loving the fact that diversion is, I'm not dwelling in what I've lost. I'm saying like, wow, what can I do now that can, just give me a sense of fulfillment one day at a time, and that's it. I just move one day at a time on this, and I avoid all of that, that white noise that is happening out there other than my Saturdays with you and my Tuesdays with the accountants where I come into my business and I dwell on all of the kind of business things that I do have to do. It's not my most enjoyable days, I will admit, but the reality is I know I have to do it, but I really segment it that it isn't just kind of, it isn't my whole week worrying about this stuff. I'm really put that to say, right, this is the way I want to be able to deal with this. And it's working really well. And I'll tell you, I've got so much more energy because of that.
That's great. That's really good advice, I think, for anybody that's joining us live or watching the replay. Oh, and we've got comments. Look. Hello. Oh, we've got another Despina. Hello, Despina. Thank you for joining us, and over there on Instagram too. But I love for anyone, that is a really good takeaway and something I find really difficult to do and trying, but I think focus grows where focus goes. So just I love that analogy with ballooning, and I see a lot of just being out a lot more in the last 6 months, being out ballooning and watching you and the team traverse weather conditions to determine where you're going to start and where you want to go. And that you've said, don't be thinking about where you don't want to be. Just having, I think that is a great analogy and a metaphor for this situation for many, where that also traversing job loss, business loss, identity loss, where suddenly I am forced to do something that is beyond my control and have to think, well, what will it be? What is something you've always wanted to do and didn't have the time to, whether it's study or the shed or the concrete or the,
Absolutely. Well, that's exactly, control the controllables. I mean, this is totally out of my, there's nothing I can do about this, and so therefore it just may as well not exist, again, it's just, that's it, that's the end of the story, I can't sit here having bleeding heart or crying, it's the reality. As it is with my motorcycle. You wake up in hospital, like boom, and they're kind of telling you that, you might not walk again. And you're like, well, that's my reality, I'm not dwelling in that situation, and again, if people are kind of wanting to talk about and remind me and do it, all it does is bring you back into a situation of something that really is of not of relevance to me,
Yeah.
So, it is. It's very important. And again, I love that thing in my life. And again, it's the gift that others give you that is really important. And this is the same with you. If you give of yourself, opportunities will abound backwards, because people really engage in that concept of being able to be. If you're around people who are just, that's where you will see, and it is about being peripheral, but it all starts with giving, and that's where we get to the community concept, because you could have a complete shift in your direction in life because of a situation like that in the most positive way. And I think that is again, it's so, you can't project that, because life is incremental, but it's the germination of a seed that comes from a situation like this that can completely shift, Well,
it's true. Like you said, everyone to be safe, that where things are at, particularly in Australia, which has been incredible, that no more, that we can contain things. But even looking at that and going through, we've just had a big trip down memory lane in a lot of the photos that we were going through earlier, with even innovation. Your accident led to a relationship with Pete and Clara, and the accessible. We gave our love, particularly your love for ballooning, to people that we weren't connected to prior to that.
Yeah.
We weren't connected to the no, sorry, you have to stand for the hour duration of the flight, for the calls of I've always wanted to do it, but we couldn't give that accessible, inclusive experience to them. It wasn't until this happened that I want everybody to experience this, and suddenly we had Australia's first ballooning basket.
And we're doing this now, my daughter has learned how to drive a tractor, ride a motorbike, use a chainsaw, drive the four-wheeler. It's all work-related, I will admit. But, the concept is that, they're great life skills. And the thing is that, I would never have had that opportunity to go and do that, or probably never wanted her to do it anyway. But for her, again, it's just little learnings that you get, the things that add to your kind of, your functionality in life. And again, this is the great thing about this, is that, in all of this, there are some positives. There are a lot of positives.
Yes.
It's certainly not all negative.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Well, it's there is still a lot of unknown, and we miss ballooning absolutely coming on board. In terms of, there's a lot of it's given us so much joy that there are people giving experiences at this time, and even though there are our businesses out of operation, it's been so humbling.
We've got a bounce back email saying we're closed down for business, and people are still buying gift vouchers. And even that, I love it. I love their optimism for the fact. I remember the first one we did, we said we would dance like crazy people. Next minute someone goes and buys a gift voucher. Great. But the thing is that, I love the optimistic people. I love the people who can just see through past this, and realise life will go on in some way. Hopefully, in my mind, in a better way. And it is. We will be open for business again. I'm absolutely 100% sure of that. We'll be back in the sky, and this moment will be a kind of our. Where were you when JFK was shot, or where was you when Neil Armstrong walked on the moon, or all these kind of things. It will just be a defined moment in history, and you will look back with pride about how you dealt with that.
Yes.
I'm looking at you homeschooling 3 kids. That is just an I mean, just to say that you did that in 10 years' time,
Yes.
hopefully it doesn't become a regular investment. But like, you know, I mean, it will be like a really great badge of honour. The fact of like, you know, I mean, I'm trying to tell my kids, you know, I started this business. We had no mobile phones, no computers, you know, like, you know, we used paper maps, you know, we didn't even have, you know, like lights for our morning helium balloons. And, you know, it's trying to get them to understand like the simple life, and this for them.
Yes.
You know, it's virtually, you know, it's going back to how I grew up. You know, you've got to be a little bored, you've got to be a little bit creative, and you've got to kind of endure it, you know, and you just kind of like, you know, you get into a bit of a rhythm about it. But, you know, certainly I think that this moment in history is a defining moment in history, and how you stood up in it, and how creative you've got, and how you kind of managed to kind of, you know, game the system to be not illegally, anyone guys, not illegally. I'm just saying, you know, in the sense of what you've learned to be able to pass this time, you know, I think will be really, it'll be really interesting to be able to have it as a dinner table story, you know, 10, 20 years time.
And it's funny even, and it's a random thought, and even when you said, at a time when you started ballooning, and I've had to go back in time into even basic math calculations with the kids of how much we've become, we rely on technology to make us think. How do you import, like even as a balloonist, as training now, like those fundamental skills of map reading or going out ballooning without the GPS, you know, just like
I mean, ask anyone who used to use the Melways to go and navigate their way around it. I met with our good mate Rod from Zonzo 2 days ago. I was helping him at his new cellar, which he's setting up, and he was talking about how one of his first jobs he was delivering pizzas. And he's going, it wasn't like they have it these days. He said, like, mate, you had to be sitting there with the Melways on your map, you know, like working out how to deliver pizzas, and, you know, like in the dark, you know, things. And they said, like, these folks don't have any idea what it's like these days, you know, and it's exactly the same. It's just those little, like, those sort of skills that you develop, you know. But certainly ballooning back in the early days, I mean, you know, we did an interview recently with Georgia, who got her commercial license. She hasn't done a commercial flight yet, poor girl. But I mean, the thing is that just trying to say, like, you know, these guys start off, you know, the experience I had at 1,000 hours doesn't match what she has at 100. You know, like, I mean, we were just, you know. Just, you know, most of the time just working it out as we go along. And this introduction, I mean, and strangely enough, in the early days, we were really opposed to the technology. We were like the cricketers who go like, I don't watch this one-day games, you know, like, you know, it's not traditional. You know? I don't need a GPS. I don't need to have this now. Like, you know, we're all on board. But, the kids are well ahead of it. But it's an interesting to reflect back on those early days.
By way of, like, in the spirit of collaboration, and something that with Global and through, you know, certainly a lot of your philosophies in business and life, I've been fortunate to be connected to and taken a lot on board in my own style of management or leadership, or even my own inherent philosophy of always looking at things that it's bigger than us, it's bigger than self, that we've been intrinsic in our involvement in our regional destinations that we work in, and have done that with a giving without any expectation of anything in return. I think just speaking a little bit to that, just that in building Global Ballooning, and I've been there for, you know, almost, you know, half of the journey over the years, just in the building ballooning, it's looking back and forward. It makes me really proud that for this business in particular, it's had a very much a significant role in placemaking, in making in the fabric of the destination. And I think that's a big credit to you. Before, that's certainly just like ballooning. You didn't go to a business school or do a tourism degree to know the benefit of partnerships and relationships and navigating that. I guess just speaking, I don't even know. I don't have a specific question outside of just how important it is to look out for small business communities in general, just not just tourism, just being very mindful of where we are spending our dollars, and that it directly affects someone's livelihood more than ever right now, but also when we reintroduce ourselves to the world and come out and able to get back into business. How important do you feel that's going to be within our communities, tourism or otherwise?
Well, community. Again, maybe because I grew up on a farm in the country, and community is everything. It's a much slower pace. Always time for a chat. There's always the little finger that goes up on the steering wheel every time you pass a car. That type of kind of old school kind of acknowledgement. For me, and you kind of mentioned it there, like it's what you give. For me, I was just driving in the Yarra Valley yesterday with Georgia, and I know I'm with my son. I just go, we're picking up some stuff for concreting. And I'm going, I don't think I've ever seen the Yarra Valley looking so beautiful as it is today. Maybe I miss it because I don't normally get to loll around in autumn, but it's so lush. It's had that summer rain, which is, so it hasn't gone from dry and then autumn kicks in. It's just been this, it's so beautiful. And the thing is that, my whole business philosophy has always been based on, I love where I live. I love Victoria. I love Victoria so much. It is a garden paradise with just an abundance of richness, of just diversity of nature. And I spend all of my time when I travel overseas just not so much talking about ballooning. That's just kind of what I do. But what an amazing place it is. What an amazing place it is to visit. And if we bring that in, certainly the Yarra Valley, I live there. I've lived there for 25 years. I love it. It is, and I've travelled all over the world. I've been in the most remarkable places. And I just think that the lifestyle component of being in the Yarra Valley is just, it is world class in what it has. And I could go on for hours about that. But, the concept of global ballooning and how we fit into that is that, to be a business in a community, you have to contribute, not to your own well-being. It's not all about yourself. It is a connection, not just with the community, but with other businesses. And this is that, it's quite interesting after all this time, the connection that I have with individuals who run businesses, and it's never been about what can you give me. It's just more like what, me knowing what they do, loving what they do, and really wanting them to be successful. A real wish for everyone to enjoy it, whether it's the consumer or other businesses, is that, this is a place that I love so much, and I just would really love everything to be like it is now. It's just vibrant and lush, and that is also applies to the community and to the businesses, is that if everything is vibrant and lush, I'm really happy. And so, most of these relationships, I never approach a relationship of what can you do for me? What's in it for me? It is really a genuine interest in the person first, and not just when you have finished doing what you do with me, it ends. I really love my connections with people. I really love long associations with people, and when I say people, this is businesses. And it's even interesting now, the landowners that we use, that I know these people. I had one of our main landowners ring up the other day, just checking in. I mean, this is a bloke whose property I use. There's no benefit to him, and he's ringing me up going, I'm just checking in how you're going, you know, you must be doing it tough, you know, like, da-da-da. And I'm like, oh, no, it's all good. I'm working around the phone. But, you know, I mean, I think it's so important, and I think it's so important in this kind of, in your business. And I am lucky because I am I'm a simple pleasures person, you know, and that again comes from a very country upbringing. I really don't need much. Like, success to me is a really strong foundation of ethical integrity that just works on a plane where the influence of what I do in my life ripples out and has an influence across the people who are in that sphere. I'm never kind of trying to kind of get more for myself, other than obviously success achieves that because of that. So I'm not trying to say that I don't make money out of ballooning, and that's not how I make my money and how I get my stuff. But it's not the primary objective, as opposed to that how I go about it is a kind of pure passion and love for what I do, where I live, and the people around me. And it's so important that connection exists, you know, with everyone and everyone that we do business. I mean, I would hope that behind my back, that they would just go, he's a really easy, nice guy to deal with, pays on time, doesn't, I mean, you know me, I can be pretty intense when I need to be. I can be pretty kind of like driven about things, and things do piss me off, but as a rule, you know, like, I mean, that's just my own passion coming through, as opposed to the fact that, you know, I do really try and, you know, ensure that all of these connections, and again, I mean, that's all these people, and global ballooning, as you would know, and you've been out in the other world, I mean, it is part of the special nature of this business is that it's not just our staff, it is the connection of all of these people that we just constantly are trying to engage. We're trying to uplift with our energy and draw from their energy, and that, you know, there is a kind of a compatibility of spirit. And certainly the businesses that we have really strong relationships with are really bound on that philosophy that, first of all, it is just an equality of energy and philosophy, more so than give me all your money or give me lots of business or give me, and just keep feeding, because that becomes insatiable and unsustainable. And it can also be, you know, completely transferable to the next person who can do a better job at it all, rather than, it's a very country thing, you know, like, I mean, where your word is your honour, and the way that you go about this is a little bit more kind of like on a level of it's just equality. Yes. And I think it's so important in business, and again, in ballooning, in everything that I do, I try and adopt that principle. And again, I mean, sometimes it works. Sometimes you have fallouts. I get it, but again, I mean, I think that, like, you know, when we look at who we have established, the people around us, you would know that's the first. The first point of entry is connection. Yes. Not what can you do for me? Yes. You know, always the same, and it very easily kind of finds its balance. And again, I mean, I think, again, as proud as I am of global ballooning and where we've come, I am more proud of the fact that where I live, I know a lot of people, and I do it, you know, that we contribute to the economic benefit of people through what we do. You know, and not just in the economic benefit, but also, you know, through altruism, through, you know, just doing nice things for people, you know, being able to actually give of ourselves in a way that just gives, I mean, and that, you know, it's like the easy access basket. You know, I mean, for the cost outlay to achieve that, the reward that comes back from the joy of people being involved in that is 100 times, you know, through what it makes me feel. And if I was trying to put a value on me being uplifted every day, no money could achieve what a smile and someone who just really
Yes.
appreciates who you are and what you do. Yeah, it's certainly very important to me, and that's why I love ballooning. It's a happy world. I mean, we do come out. I mean, we're very lucky to live in a world where, that people are excited, enthusiastic, in awe, think you've got the best job in the world.
Yeah.
All of this is just, again, the money is secondary to the fact that they're just feeding your kind of, your energy levels. And that's just, as I say, you could take that across every human contact that I have, is just that you want to be around people like that, whether it's in the coronavirus times or whatever.
Yeah.
People who feed your energy and inspire you, and make you want to get out of bed.
It was great to see you inspired last year. And again, going back to the history books of photos from altitude records, Nepal, North Pole, France, Slovenia, Grampians, Uluru, Sydney Harbour Bridge, tick, 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 tick. As a balloonist, there's not much you haven't done, but there was the gas ballooning adventure. And it was that experience of being a very accomplishing mastery in your profession, outside of as a business owner, but in what you do, you've achieved so much. And to go back being a student and finding a mentor, what was just reflecting on that experience and being challenged and how important that is.
Yeah, well, I think that goes down to, I mean, business is hard work. Like, I mean, here I am painting this picture about how it all is and how proud I am. But I mean, look, again, bringing this time where you actually have a chance to actually stop, which I haven't had for so many years, well, 30 years, where I'm not constantly feeling like I have to be busy or being busy or having people wanting things of me. It drains you. It does kind of sex, and particularly when you're at the top. When you're at the top of your game and you're always the go-to person, it's very hard to have time to be inspired. And I mean, I am a person who trades off inspiration. I said, like, I like to be around people who do inspire me. And, I think that I'm spending all my time training and doing things and being involved in something where I am at the top. And so, I had for 30 years wanted to get involved in gas ballooning, which is not like hot air. It is a hydrogen cell above your head, so it's got no gas or anything. It's basically your lift is in the balloon and you basically take off and you fly for very long distance in complete silence. And it's very technical in the sense that you fly. I mean, these balloons can stay up for 4 or 5 days, and it's very romantic. Although hot air ballooning has the claim to fame of being the very first form of aviation, it very quickly died because they invented hydrogen ballooning 2 months later in France. And hydrogen ballooning was aviation up until the 1900s. And it's got a really romantic old style to it about, people would build boats underneath their hydrogen balloons. So if they flew out to sea, they had something to float in. And you see a lot of that old lithographs and things like that of balloons, hydrogen balloons, and they're all really colourful. And that was an amazing thing back then. So it's got a really rich history, hydrogen ballooning. And I guess if you are a balloonist and you care about such things, and meteorology and all of this, I mean, that is the romantic notion of it all. And so, yeah, I mean, this business and raising children has kind of, taken up most of my time for the past 20 years. And so my daughter finished school last year and I decided, well, now's the time to be inspired. I'm going to actually go and do this. I'm going to actually not keep working for money. I'm going to go and spend some of my money and I'm going to do something that I've always wanted to do that really will inspire me. And so the hydrogen ballooning, I just went and bought a hydrogen balloon. And one of my pilots who works for me in Melbourne is a hydrogen balloonist in Poland. And so we decided to enter the Gordon Bennett, which is the oldest aviation race in the world. It started in about 1906, and it's the competition who can fly the furthest across the boundaries of Europe. Europe being the boundary, and Yeah, and so it's a really prestigious. It's like the America's Cup of aviation, and yeah, and you're around people who are. I mean, I'm a balloonist. I fly for an hour or two. I feel like I've done an amazing job. I mean, these people are the real, you know, the real deal when it comes to being adventurous. I mean, they're the type of round the world sailors. You know, they hop in these small baskets. They can fly for 4 or 5 days, and endure the most incredible stuff. And they're very capable people, and it takes what the knowledge that I have, which is kind of micro meteorologically based and aeronautically based, to which is a very short period of time, into something that is a full endurance event that really expands being able to actually understand the concept of meteorology over 5 days, not just 2 hours. And in all of that, it was really challenging on every aspect. I mean, fear, the unknown, just getting my head around it, having to make decisions, even just having that kind of feeling of, am I good enough for this? Am I strong enough for this? I mean, am I going to be capable? And yeah, it was. Look, I ended up doing 5 gas balloon flights. So I was over there with the Gordon Bennett we competed to, and we managed to fly across the whole of France in 2 days, two nights. So we had about 39 hours in the air. Yeah, it was really challenging for me, but again, for a bloke who likes to be challenged, by the end of it all, I mean, I'm like, wow, this is right where I wanted to be. And as you will know, I mean, I really committed to this journey by installing you as CEO of the company, and I was really looking forward to pursuing this, and then hopefully bringing gas ballooning back to Australia. And that's just on hold.
That's it.
But certainly, last year I got to face, a lot of my own insecurities about where I'm at in this industry, and how do I learn quickly, because this is a new thing, and I mean, it was really good. It was similar like when we were just instructing Georgia. When I instruct, it reminds me of what I know when I am imparting knowledge. Like when I'm imparting knowledge, I'm having to kind of dig down into why I do things, because a lot of the time I just naturally do stuff without really thinking about it. But when you teach, you have to kind of actually, compartmentalize each step of this journey, and what is your thinking for why you do stuff, to be able to get someone to understand it. Well, with this thing, I'm in completely the opposite. I'm the guy who's learning, and so I'm trying to drag out. So all the things I'm telling my students, take notes, do things, document, think about this thing when you're at home. Don't just wait while you're on the field. I mean, all this stuff, it's just like sending me back to school. And again, I'd like to think I'm a good instructor. I'm a terrible student. And, I'm a classic, like, do what I say, not what I do type of guy. And I really find myself like in this thing, like, mate, you can die very easily with a big bag of hydrogen balloon, and you get it wrong and you want to be complacent. You got to start taking this seriously, and you've really got to do it. And again, and then fear kicks in. And again, I mean, I like to think of myself as fearless, but it is the unknown, and it's been, it was really good for me, and I think it really instilled a lot of energy in me. And as I say, I was so looking forward to getting back and continuing that journey.
Yes.
But certainly last year, and certainly culminating in this amazing flight across France, with the full moon over, 2 nights, and just looking down over France in absolute silence, drifting along in a 1.2 metre square basket with another bloke sitting beside you eating sandwiches, you know, like, I mean, it was just everything that I had hoped it would be, you know, and just that incredible thing, you know, the sound permeating up just because there's not one bit of noise in a gas balloon, you know. Yeah, really something amazing.
Well, it's on hold.
Yeah, on hold.
It's on hold. It'll come. I think 2020 is all about year of self-discovery.
And to be honest, I'm getting fitter now, which is what I had to do last year. I didn't actually manage to achieve it. Now with all this manual labour, I'll probably be better on the endurance fronts because that was one of my biggest fears.
Yeah.
You know, how will my body cope with sitting in a basket, you know, like for you know, well, I mean, these guys can be up, as I say, for 4 or 5 days. Yeah. You know, could I actually physically endure that?
Yes.
You know, it's camping, you know, on steroids. You know, and again, there's just nowhere to go. Yeah, so, we'll see. But I am happy that I'm a lot fitter, or will be a lot fitter. And I'm certainly going to use this time to start to put into practice now what I know, which is, you know, get fit.
Yeah, new habits. One more question that came. You love to read. What's been a favourite book of yours to share with people? What's a favourite? It just came to you. Like, I've always wanted to ask that question, and I'm glad it came to me.
Well, we had these kind of travel Bibles. I mean, I think it's interesting you should ask that question because you know, there's a lot of reading going on at the house at the moment because you know, people are getting my old books. You know, and I was looking at the fact of like what books actually helped transform my journey when I was doing it. And I gave my son a copy of Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. I don't know if anyone knows this book, but it's really...
What's it called, Zen?
Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. It was a real travel Bible back when I was travelling. Not everyone, but like it was, you know, the book. I mean, I go from quite kind of complex books. I mean, I'm a great fan of historical fiction as a rule. I mean, which is that it does set its theme in a time and place that lets me learn about that time in history as opposed to just it being a story. You know, like I do love to be absorbed in writers that can really kind of create a scene. And interestingly enough, George is reading Cloud Street, Tim Winton. I don't know if you've ever read that. Anyway, it's such a beautiful book which goes and talks about kind of Perth and Western Australia back in the 50s. And it's just, it is an exceptional book. I mean, you know, Richard Flanagan. I mean, some of the books, I mean, I used to love Illusions, which is a tiny book by Richard Bach, which is about a barnstormer who's going around. And it's, again, these are things that are connected to kind of positive energy. I really enjoyed Peter Carey's Bliss. I thought that was a really, you know, really interesting book about, you know, an advertising executive changing his whole outlook on life. Again, just kind of realising that he's stuck in a kind of, you know, world that doesn't really match his net. Look, there's so many. I mean, you know, I was look, I won't go through too many.
Start a global ballooning book club.
Yeah.
In my so.
Well, I mean, I tend to.
I'll have to watch it back and make some notes.
Yeah. I mean, I can, you know. I mean, I look, you know, the Celestine Prophecy. I mean, that's another little travel Bible that you have if you want to be able to understand the concept of you know, serendipity and things. And again, I kind of have this more kind of alternative kind of way of looking at stuff, you know, as my default position. And so these type of books that do just kind of make me think, you know, like, I mean, you know, look, there's the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying. I mean, you know, I mean, there's kind of these type of things that just help me to shape who I am. But I don't subscribe to any doctrine, you know, I'm not religious. I don't tend to kind of want to dwell in buying other people's philosophy. I'm very much trying to build the puzzle that is me from the influence. And this is where travel has been exceptionally good, particularly for me when I was in my very early 20s. Like going to China was the best thing I could ever do, because it turned my world upside down from what I knew, because everything was different. But I mean, what I learned from these people is they had nothing. So I came from this kind of first world environment with my Sony Walkman and my backpack and just having had a good education, to travelling right out through China in a country where, you know, I mean, they're really poor, but I'll tell you what, their level of happiness and their ability, what they could give, they would just give. And I think that, you know, same with, you know, like, well, China is a Confucianist country, it was communist, so it doesn't even, back then it didn't even have that as a philosophy, but it's got Taoism, Buddhism, for Confucius, and then you've got, like, you know, like out in the very west of China, where the Uyghurs are, you know, got Muslim, and then travelling through Russia, and then all seeing different religions, living in Israel, seeing that. I mean, I love to take bits of everything and kind of do it. And the same with books. I just try and take little things that give me gifts, like people. I'm just getting little bits and adding it to what is me, and just trying to kind of go, that fits, that works, and go with that. I mean, there was a time where I kind of went through the full self-help books, you know, which you do when you're stressed or you're going through a divorce or in everything. And I kind of found that it's all pretty similar, you know, in the sense of what it is. I mean, for me, again, I'm looking for inspiration, not necessarily a cure. I mean, I want to be able to find out what fits for me and how it goes. And certainly, like, you know, a book that really engages me, you know, I do feel myself, you know, just being not transformed into the characters, but into the environment that is.
Yes.
And now, like that Tim Whitney book about the surfers, breathe or breath, or whatever it is. You know, that's another one. Just you could just see my childhood running around bare feet. You know, you never had shoes on for, you know, like doing stuff and being, you know, like really be, you know, seeing the kind of illusion of heat waves and, you know, things that, you know, writers that can capture that, just really that kind of setting that I'm quite familiar with. I really love it. Yeah.
In terms of people, who would you say has been your greatest inspiration? You talked about your grandfathers. Like, can you think of someone that you know or that you've looked up to?
Well, look, I mean, I have a series of mentors in my life. Actually, it's interesting. I mean, I can see the people that have changed the way I think in my life. You know, through that, in a way that I feel have made me a better person, in the sense of how I go about doing what I do. And you know, there's not a lot of those people, but certainly my grandfather was a, you know, I mean, it just, yeah, he was very, just those type of proverbs that give you this thing. There was a lady I met, incredible, like one person, and I didn't even know her. Her name was Bid Davies, and she was a spinster in Camden, where I grew up. I used to go, I don't know why, I was kind of a strange kid, because she was in her 80s or 70s or something, and I used to go and have a cup of tea with her and just have a chat. It's a very strange thing for a young kid to do, but you know, she had a teapot that was well used, like a well used, loved teapot. You know, like, I mean, where a cup of teas in those days was the whole thing. You know, everyone just sat around and had a cup of tea, and tea was poured out of a teapot, and you did tea in a proper way. And you know, and I noticed that on the mantelpiece, right where the teapot, it had, like, you know, this sign which said, "Just do it now." And I've used that all my life, which is funny now that you have these marketing cameras that are like, "Just do it," whatever it is, you know. Like, and here this woman had "do it now," and that has stuck with me all of my life. You know, just that simple thing, you know. Like, I mean, like, and you know, just the way that, I mean, she was a real goer. I mean, she was an incredible community woman, and just a doyer of our local community, and just so active. I mean, my grandmother was one of my great mentors. I mean, I say my grandfather, but my grandmother was even more. I mean, she was 80 and driving a Volkswagen Beetle, and he used to go down to Bondi Beach and, she'd just go and work and again, that type of mentor. Peter Vizard, in the ballooning world was a great inspiration for me. Again, he was a teacher and a balloonist. And I think that in my world, he's just not so much what he taught me, but just, some of the phraseology and things about, like, the searching of wisdom, which I think has really set me up, and I've moved on from where he was, to how I would like that to present. But certainly I think these type of gifts, what it is. I have an amazing friend here, Chris Hooper, who, is an incredibly giving person who's taught me, the whole concept. Well, hasn't taught me. She just demonstrates empathy and lovingness and community. And again, they're just, they're profound actions that really influence me. Look, there's a few others. There's an old girlfriend that I had that was just absolutely changed the way I thought on an emotional level. And again, they're funny things, these things, but I do mark them, and I absolutely know who they are. And some of these people I don't see anymore, but I know they will always be a part of my heart.
Yes.
They will always be there. Very solidly implanted in who I am, never to forget.
Yeah.
And that's very important to me. Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that. So in your next, I guess, outside of Gordon Bennett, what would you like? What's the is there a vision? What would you like to see for global or beyond, or non-global? What's something that you would love to come out of this?
Oh, look, I need to say, other than on a global consciousness level of kind of simple pleasures, look, Despy, I'm a one day at a time type of guy. I don't project it. Look, I'm a terrible person to be in a relationship with, because I never plan. I consciously avoid kind of trying to look too far ahead. So for me, it will be what it will be, and but with optimism, and that everything will be okay. I just think that, have faith in humans, and be positive towards the fact that, magnificence is manifested through positive energy, and just trust in the fact that it'll all be okay. And I think that there'll be amazing opportunities that will come out of this for many people, many shifts, many kind of creativities. For me, as I say, it'll be what it'll be, but it'll be, I'll just enjoy this beautiful day and drive back to my valley and bask in what it is. But this is the accident, that was a second chance at a second life, and that's the big profound message out of that, is just that in an absolute instant, a matter of seconds, your whole life can be changed. So I'm not going to look any further ahead than loving those around me and making sure that they know that, and not getting too ahead of myself for now. Yeah.
You've done good.
Yeah,
You've
thanks,
done
Despy.
good, Kiff. You've done good. Well, I've certainly, just looking at the work, the energy, the love, the people, that is all stemmed from you and Zeffy, the dog.
Yeah.
That was the first pick.
Yeah.
Started a man and his dog, and there has been a lot of beauty in having this space to acknowledge that in our families, in our businesses, in our lives. I didn't really know where this would go today. I just knew that this was something that we could do with our time to connect with people that have been following us and enjoying the journey along. So thank you who's joined us. It looks like the stream might be struggling now, but thank you for doing this. And Wendy, thank you for is absolutely. This is what Wendy's had to say. I don't know if it's not going to show it. But we'll leave it there and end the broadcast, and thank you for everybody for staying with us. Okay, go global from 2 Humans of Global. Bye everyone.
Relax.